Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ronka and I create content on travel, career, and godly living. In today's video, we are talking about choosing your references wisely. Now, if you are in the career world or in the workforce, typically what happens is that after you've had an interview and you are potentially going to get an offer, a recruiting manager or HR professional will typically ask you for your references. Now, your references are individuals, whether professional or personal, who can speak to your character, who can speak to your background, who can speak to experience working with you or engaging with you overall. Now, your references are extremely important because these are people that are kind of vouching for you, right? And so, as I mentioned, this might be something that happens at the point where you either have received an offer or about to receive an offer. And it's important because they want to make sure that you have someone that can speak to the type of person that you are or what you've done in the past before they welcome you into their organization. So when you're choosing references, it is extremely important that you follow a few tips. Now, before we even get to the point of actually choosing your references, I think the most important thing you have to keep in mind in general is just to build good relationships. Your references are people that you either know professionally or personally, like I mentioned, but they are people that you know. It can't just be some random person whose office was down the corner from yours. Yes, they may decide to give you a reference if you ask, but ideally references are best when they are people who truly know you, have worked with you, have talked with you, they have an idea of the quality of work that you do, they have an idea of how you handle different situations. Because you don't really know the question that the hiring manager would ask, right? And you want to make sure that they're getting consistent feedback. More often than not, they're not going to ask for just one reference. You typically want to provide 2, 3, maybe more references. And so being able to have people who all know you well and all have similar things to say about you is positive. And the best way really to do that, like I said, is to build authentic relationships. Now, you don't want to go about it from the perspective of, let me build a relationship only because I want to use this person as a reference. But do have it in mind when you're building relationships. And in general, build quality relationships. Be very mindful of, the things that you're either discussing or the way that you're presenting yourself with the mindset that, hey, I would want anyone that I'm working with to be able to say positive things about me. Now, my second tip is that you need to reassess. Before you start picking references, and even while you're in the process of building relationships, you need to do a very real self-evaluation to figure out what kind of a worker you are, what kind of an individual you are, what kind of a team player you are. And it's important to do this so that you can adjust where necessary. The thing about a self-assessing also is that at the point where maybe you're interviewing or about to get an offer, it's important for you to be aware of the type of person that you are so that you have an idea of maybe who can speak best to the positive sides of you that you want highlighted. Now, obviously, most people are going to pick and choose the individuals who probably will speak the best of them. But really the best way to do this is by self-assessing and making sure you have an idea of like your overall, your overall dynamic first. Additionally, the importance with self-assessing is that you also want to be honest with yourself about where your shortcomings are. You don't necessarily want any constructive feedback or criticism that someone might share, whether to you or a recruiting manager. You don't want it to catch you off guard. You do want to be aware so that in the event that it is something that is shared with the recruiter or even you have an idea of how you're going to actively resolve it. The third tip when you are choosing your references. So when you're choosing your references, you really want to pick the person who's going to be able to speak to you the best. Now, this will differ based on where you are in your career. It'll differ based on maybe what you're trying to do. So let's say that you are recently graduated from college and maybe you have some research that you did and maybe you also had an on-campus job. Choosing the research professor and the on-campus job supervisor would be a good pick of 2 because those are 2 experiences that you've had that you've recently done. Now, if you are further into your career, there's really no point in you going back to your research professor if your research has absolutely nothing to do with your career, or if you've already had enough experiences that you should have other supervisors or managers or superiors that you can rely on. When you're also thinking about who your references are, if you're looking to switch careers, obviously you might not necessarily have people within the industry or career that you're looking to get into, but if you do, it's usually best to pick people aligned to that. So if you are someone that wants to be a product manager and maybe you've dabbled a little bit in product management in your current organization, identifying individuals who can speak to you working in a product manager capacity would be ideal. Additionally, you also, like I said, want to pick people who can speak to your work. Don't choose some random person who just has a fancy title, because the title will not get you the job. You want to pick people who can speak to your specific contributions to the team. They can speak to your character. They can speak to personal experience working with you. That is always going to be in your best interest. The fourth tip I'll provide, so as I mentioned, a lot of times this is when you're about to get an offer. And so if you are someone that currently already has a role, it might not be ideal to have your current supervisor be your reference if you don't necessarily want them to know that you're planning to leave. Now, in the event that maybe you're moving cross country, you're shifting industries and it's known, or maybe you left to go to school and you're coming back into the workforce, in those instances, it doesn't really matter. But if you are in a sort of situation where for whatever reason you don't want your current employer to know that you're trying to leave, it might not be best to choose your actual supervisor. More often than not, jobs are not going to prescribe exactly who the reference has to be from, right? They might say someone from your current company. And so if you do have a relationship with someone at your organization that is a mentor or just supportive of your overall career growth, they might not have an issue speaking to a recruiting manager or hiring manager, whoever might be on your behalf, even if they know that ultimately that means you would leave their organization. So you do have to plan wisely in terms of who you would ask. In addition, you also can tell the hiring manager that, hey, once I actually get an offer, I can then provide this person as a reference, right? And that might be something that would then open the door for you to provide your current supervisor or manager as a reference. Fifth tip, when you are choosing your references, please make sure that you ask the person. You never want to just put the person's name up without asking them. Even if they've told you in the past that they're more than willing to be a reference for you, even if you've used them as a reference in the past, always make sure that you just extend the courtesy to ask them and make sure it's something that they're willing to commit to, because ultimately it does take time. You know, nowadays references happen in a variety of different ways. It might be a phone call, it could be a form, whatever the option is. Just make sure that you ask them so that they are prepared to do it. For the sixth tip, in relation to the one I just mentioned, in terms of preparation, you want to make sure that you're also providing whoever your reference is going to be with your resume, meaning the resume that you use to apply for whatever position it is, and the job description. You want them to be able to speak as best as possible, not only to your background, but also speaking about your background in a way that aligns with the role. I think that's extremely important. Yes, it is giving them work, but that's the importance of doing the right thing and asking them explicitly before you put them in. I personally believe that if you have a good enough relationship with someone, they will not bat an eyelash, or they should not have a huge problem with doing a quick glance at your resume, doing a quick glance at a job description, and speaking on your behalf to someone. References, once again, are extremely, extremely important. So I hope the tips I've provided here are able to help you and guide you in the process of choosing references for future positions that you may find. That's all I have for today. Please make sure that you subscribe to my channel for more travel, career, and godly living content. See you next time.